Lete o Nimutolu taha. Atumari e Carlo, great to be here.
Yes, Morena. I know, I see it.
Music Awards.
Now, I understand, Don, congratulations. In order, as I see right here, Radio 531 PI won a special recognition award at the Pacific Music Awards last night. Tell us all about it and how was the overall event last night?
Look, first of all, myself and the team who were there and our board members who were there, led by Sai Leolea, we're really just the ones to receive it. I mean, this acknowledgement is for everyone who has worked at 531 over 30 plus years, you know, and that whether that be a board member or someone in the back office or someone in front of the microphones or behind the microphones like you and Marlo are this morning, that's for everyone, you know, and I think special acknowledgement should also go to those who set up the Auckland Pacific Island Community Radio Trust. There's a lot of work done in the back of the 1980s, early 1990s, and we know who they are. We speak about them often on the show. You know, so obviously Sefeta led it, but there were others like Toisoro Brown, Hanuki Tama, John Kainuku, Alpito Seal was part of it back in those days, and there were many others. You know.
Don, 30 years of broadcasting, Pacific music, Pacific languages, and news for our Pacific communities. What do you think about when you reflect on 3 decades of Pacific radio broadcasting?
Oh, I think the main thing is we should celebrate is we're still here.
Absolutely.
And you think of what's happened in the media industry. Just recently, in the last 5 years, you know, you had magazines like Bauer magazines, the big magazines. They folded. Some of our big organisations were trying to merge. There was a public media merger proposed, and then we've got the technology companies coming in, and we're still here, and we're still going. And I think that original dream and vision of a by Pacific, for Pacific, led by Pacific, worked by Pacific organisation still holds true today. It's still valid today. And an interesting thing, I went to a wānanga yesterday with many major media companies, and the main discussion point is how can they serve our diverse populations? And it's interesting, it wasn't lost on me that, we've been doing it for 30 years, so hello, welcome to the party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, my mic. Thank you very much. Now, Don, Radio 531 PI has also been an incredible training ground for many broadcasters, journalists and technicians. Can you please describe the impact that Radio 531 PI has had on that media landscape?
Oh, you know, it's incredible, and I think if you think of most leading, well, not even leading, most Pacific broadcast professionals have spent time here. More often than not, learning their trade here, and before going on. More often than not. And you know, I mean, we could sit here and we could name many. And you know, you look at some of our Pacific people our Pacific leaders at RNZ. You know, have spent their time here. And only a couple of weeks ago, of course, it's still happening with Agnes Dupo going off to ABC.
So proud.
But that's not only those of us the team who work in the broadcasting space. You know, we had Ella Lohini Stansel, or Ella Stansel Lohini, is now a lead part of the digital team for the Rugby World Cup. But even look at our board members, like say the likes of Karen Rangi, you know, and some of the big governorship roles she has in Aotearoa. All of these people have come through here, and I'm not sure if many of our listeners know is that it's actually written into our charter, into our constitution, and our trust deed, that we've got a responsibility to provide they call it a pipeline, it's an awful word, a pipeline of Pacific broadcasters. And so I definitely think 531 over the years has overachieved in that, and we're still doing it. It's a double-edged sword because people come and go, but hey, we're still doing it, and it's an important role.
We're still here.
Still here.
Now, Don, Radio 531 PI is, of course, part of the Pacific Media Network, PMN, but the umbrella organisation is the National Pacific Radio Trust. I understand that there might be a significant change in store for the MPRT. Can you please explain what that change is and what impact it will have?
Oh, yeah. First of all, it's really a technical change. Would be probably about 6 years ago, the board at the time, led by Tūmalu Peter Whawhiu at the time, looked at our trust deed, and we were founded to provide radio broadcasting services to our communities on the back of significant migration of the 1980s, and just going back to that time, it was deemed that radio was the best mode to communicate with our people, and you could argue it still is. But of course, there's many other options now. And so we just been working away in the background and been working with ministry officials, because our trust deed has to be signed off at a government level. I know it all sounds very boring, but we're technically changing our name from the National Pacific Radio Trust to the National Pacific Media Trust. It's a small change, it's one word, but it just signifies that, yes, we'll continue to be radio, but we have aspirations to be many other things as well. And we have aspirations to future-proof ourselves. And so we've made that change at a constitutional level in our legal documents, just so it'll start to change our relationship at a government level as well.
Now, Don, to other news.
Yep.
The recognition that 531 PI won last night was actually sponsored by the Ministry for Pacific Peoples.
Right.
As you know, MPP made national headlines last night for all the wrong reasons. At 7:30 this morning, we gave our Pacific Mornings editorial view on the matter. But I wonder if you have any thoughts about the situation that MPP finds themselves in, and the controversy over the inappropriate use of public funds, and maybe your view on how the mainstream media has been reporting on this.
Oh, in the hot seat, eh? Okay, right. Well, first of all, I want to mihi out to Geraldine and the team at MPP. Geraldine's doing a terrific job, and the team at MPP, and I want to mihi out to them. Secondly, when I think about this, I mean, the Public Service Commissioner and the Public Service Commission, they're there to do an important job, and that's to represent taxpayers, to make sure appropriate spending of money. So, I mean, they've got no issue there. And what they've done is appropriate, and the inquiry is appropriate. But I think I take a step back on these things, and ultimately MPP and ourselves, I include us in this, our fate will be determined by our community. And we're answerable to our community. And I'm not trying to belittle the role of the Public Service Commission and the Public Service Commission, but ultimately, whether our communities support MPP or us, organisation, or our other Pacific providers, comes down to trust. It comes down to whether we can deliver and serve. And ultimately, our fate in terms of trust and support will be determined by our community. And I'm sure MPP can do that under Geraldine's leadership and the team there. They'll get through this and they'll bounce back. I do, in terms of reporting by other organisations, well, that's their kaupapa. But it's interesting. I mentioned before I attended a wānanga yesterday, and it was organised by staff. And the kaupapa, or the purpose of the wānanga, was to how do we deal with, ironically, about bias or discrimination in reporting, and how do newsrooms better equip themselves to understand sort of positioning and the system of which communities they represent operate in. So maybe I'm not here to justify anything to do with the MPP situation, and I'm not commenting on that. But what I will ask people perhaps just to consider is the use of words and how this is reported. And so for a simple word like party, I was at the farewell event. I was there. And again, I'm not trying to justify the expenditure, and I'm not here to do that. But it was a significant cultural event represented by over 11 nations. I was at the event, and peoples of 11 nations at that event. It wasn't a party, and so the use of words and the use of languages. So I just remember that. The other thing, too, which I'd ask people to consider is we're going into an election. And now it's important that in my role I remain apolitical, and I'm not going to wade into party politics. It's inappropriate for me to do so. But what we will find as we head to the election is that in the race for the centre vote, and it's a popularity contest, is what tends to happen is marginalised communities will be weaponised in political rhetoric. So I just ask our community to, when you're seeing reporting and you sift through reporting, you take time to consider it. You take time to consider who's saying what, regardless of the subject, whether it's this subject or another subject. And when people are commenting on things, take time to understand their position, what has been their time spent in our community. If someone has a view on, say, for instance, specific people, specific communities, well, what's their track record?
Yeah.
Do they spend time in our communities? Are they present? All those type of things. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. Now, Don, I understand the staff event that you attended yesterday had several themes, including, understanding discrimination, te tiriti o waitangi in the media, as you say, and improving representation. Can you tell us more about the workshop and some of the reflections that you've taken away with you from that whānau?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge and mihi to Carmen Parahi, who's the one of the senior executives at Stuff, who our listeners may remember 3 years ago, Stuff.co.nz made an apology for their reporting over 100 odd years and sort of discrimination and bias in their reporting, and they took a stance. So the workshop yesterday was really Stuff saying, okay, well, we made that apology 2-3 years ago. It was really a call out to other media organisations. Would you like to join us on our journey? And what does that look like? And one of the things that were discussed yesterday, and which Stuff pointed out, and which I agree with, is we have to remember the history of media in Aotearoa, and many of our mainstream media entities are really they were part of the sort of whole colonisation of Aotearoa and their colonial constructs. You look at the name, like the Dominion was the name of the newspaper. So it was reflecting on, I guess, the history of media in Aotearoa. But what we saw yesterday was mainstream media organisations make an attempt to better reflect communities. I guess from my perspective, I'm sitting there going, yes, I support. Of course, I support what they're doing, and I support the kaupapa. But it comes back to our early discussion. Well, we've been here for 30 years.
Yeah.
We don't talk about underrepresentation. Yourself and others have worked there. We've been representing our communities, and we've been doing it for 30 years. And so, I know I'm being a little bit cheeky, in that, but I'm sort of say, well, where have you been? And welcome to the party. But hey, I applaud it and I support it, and I certainly support any means to better represent our people, more opportunities for our people, and fairer representation on stories. I'm all in support of that.
Now, as we wrap up, Don, after a very busy few days for you, what final thoughts would you like to share with our Pacific Mornings listeners?
Pacific Mornings. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for your support of Agnes and Levi over that time, and I haven't had a chance to just mention Agnes and be well Agnes. Also, I want to make mention too of Lorenzo Kaisara, who's on our 5:31 PM in Samoa show. I congratulate Lorenzo for being elected to Otara Papatoia, local board, and he's moving on to focus on that work and, of course, his work with in the health sector. So I just thank you all. I thank you for supporting Carlo, and we had Carlia in here. We've had Atutahi for sticking with us.
Still here.
As I say, we're not going anywhere. The team do, and I just acknowledge the team, and I just acknowledge you. There's many choices people can make in the mornings. There are many choices people can do with their time, and I just thank those for staying with us and for supporting us.
I understand there's a song that you wanted to be played. Is there a significance to that song, or?
Every time I think about the Pacific Music Awards,
yes,
I think I grew up listening to our musicians out of Vava'u, Bill Wolfgram and his Islanders, who all connected to our whānau. There's a song called Hawaiian Cowboy, which my Uncle George sang on.
Wow.
And I think possibly it's the earliest example of a rap and a Pacific song. So I'd like us to go out with Bill Wolfgram and his Islanders and my Uncle George Mann Sr. Performing the middle section of the song, Of Atu Malo.
That's beautiful. That is Don Mann, our CEO. It is 7 minutes to 9.